On, everybody? We've already got some people in the chat. What's going on? What's going on? Brian and James, how is it going? And what's up, Andrew?
How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Hey, James, North Carolina. What's up, big boy? James Monroe there, baby. Yes, sir.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Well, super excited to have everybody here. We're going to be talking laundromats today. Anytime I get to sit and talk laundromats with the Andrew Cunningham is a good day for me and anybody else who gets to listen in on that. So I'm excited about this, man. And it's been too long since we've done one of these, so I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah.
It should be a lot of fun. Awesome. James says doing great. Love it. Love it. Do you know James?
Yeah, I got James in the business.
That's what I'm talking about. All right.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, hey, listen real quick while we're getting started here. Number one, this is a Q&A, and on this Q&A, you have the Human Laundromat Encyclopedia right here. Kevin, what's going on, man? And Scott.
Hello, Scott.
Awesome. And Joshua.
Yeah.
Hey, while you guys are typing in the chat, why don't you put where you're tuning in from in the world? I'm in Orange County, California. Andrew, where are you at?
I'm in Torrance, California.
Awesome. We're basically neighbors.
Yeah, basically.
We keep saying this. We need to do one of these things live, like together in the same room.
You know what we should do? Just to tease everybody, we got to do it live at Huntington Beach.
I love that. I love it. We'll go sit with our feet in the sand and sun on our faces and get after it. I love it. Dude, we're tuning in from all over. Brooklyn, with Gene, Armin's in Oakland, Beck's in Dallas, Joshua's in Austin, James in North Carolina.
And we got Kansas City.
Kansas City. All right. Nice. Dude, there's look, we got Dallas, Austin, Kansas City all here. We've got to have a barbecue talk here. Who's got the best barbecue? That's what I want to know.
Yeah,
I want to know. And Lubbock. Lubbock's representing too. And Madison's in North Carolina. Awesome. Vancouver, we're international. We're international.
Yeah.
And Scott,
we've hit it.
Way to represent Orange County with me, Scott. And Jamie representing SoCal with both Andrew and I. Awesome. The Texas Owl is tuning in from Cleveland, which I did not see coming. I'll say that right now.
Austin, best barbecue. Well, that could probably be pretty close there. I don't know. Kansas City's got some great barbecue, though.
I know, man. It's tough. I wonder if I could it'd be fun to do a poll. I don't know if I can do a poll in here. I'm going to look that up if we get some downtime. But, hey, this is a Q&A, and we are here to answer your laundromat-related questions. So whether you're getting into the business and you've got questions on that side of things, or maybe you're already in this business and you want to figure out how to make more money, expand your empire, gain more freedom, whatever the case may be, this is a time and a place for you to ask those questions. And again, we've got the Andrew Cunningham in the house today, so there should be a lot of fun here to chat while Cleveland's chiming in. Got tired of all the Texas barbecue and moved. That's awesome. Yeah. Shots fired, man. Shots fired. I love it.
It is. Well,
I love it. Let's keep it feisty in the chat.
Now we got to fly out there and try it.
That's right. That's right. So if you got questions, get them in the chat there, and we'll start jumping in on that. Andrew, we talked a little bit,
briefly,
texted a little bit before we jumped on here, and I said, hey, to kick this thing off while we're waiting for questions to roll in, so get those questions in. While we're waiting for questions to roll in, what do you have to rant about today? And
my rant today is to all the sellers who aren't on the feed today, and that is people are trying to sell laundromats without financial information, and it makes it harder for people like Jordan and myself, not counting all the buyers out there and the people that want to buy other laundromats. When you come up against a seller who says, well, you know, I have other businesses and I only do one tax return. And, you know, when people say that to me, I always chuckle And a lot of times I say, yeah, but for every entity you have under that LLC, you have to have a K1. So what's the K1 for that business? And so, you can't really hide. A lot of them want to hide, and I understand why they're hiding. They have stolen from themselves for so long that they can't put really on paper what they've been doing. But that doesn't help people like myself or Jordan or even the buyer wanting to size up the business and see if it's worth 50, 100, 500, $1 million. It's interesting. I had 2 conversations today, one with a client that had 50,000 and one with a client that had a $500,000. And I have to tell you that there's no difference to me in the value of the money. To the guy who has 50, it's everything he has. And it's the guy who has a $500,000, it's everything he has. And the goal here is to make them feel comfortable, or get them to feel comfortable that the information that they're receiving from the seller is accurate, or at least close to being accurate, that they can feel comfortable that they can move to the next phase outside the due diligence. So my biggest issue today is my bitch and gripe is, where are all the legitimate sellers and where's all the legitimate numbers that are out there? I don't necessarily need to see tax returns because everybody cheats on them. So, I want to see.
Not everybody. I just want to point that out. Not
Okay.
everybody.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
That was a general statement. I shouldn't have said that, but
we are notorious in our industry for that. So
it's all cash. That's what they tell you, wink and a nod. But I like the fact that there's card systems now that collect all the data. And I like someone that, is old school and he's got a binder with 2 years worth of collection reports in it that he can say, this is how I collected my laundromat. And I believe the information that they put together because it took them so long to do it.
Yeah.
Hold on, Gene. I've looked at 10 laundromat and no one has good records. That's true. However, now you get to look at what they do have, and you have to be able to read what they have in order to understand the income side of that business. So, Gene, if you could type in there, what have you seen? And I can answer some questions for you.
Yeah, and kind of to your point on your original rant here, sellers end up losing out in equity in their business when they don't have good records. Your business is more valuable when you have good records on the sales side of things. So keeping good records and there's a lot of different ways. Actually, I'm doing a podcast interview tomorrow with a tax guy. We're going to be talking about actually how to maximize your tax advantages with your laundromat. I'm excited about it. And then we're going to do a Q&A with him too, so we can answer tax questions.
Don't miss that.
Yeah.
Highly beneficial.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like there's a question here about from Armin about washers.
Yeah, dryers and washers.
I have 70 dryers at 2,500 pound capacity. If I reduce the number of dryers, but I have to 56, but 2,800 pound capacity, do you think that would be an issue?
So less dryers, but more capacity. Essentially, replacing smaller dryers with bigger dryers. It sounds like, or single pockets or double pockets.
Okay. And my question would be: are we talking about a 3,000 square foot, a 4,000 square foot, or 20,000 square foot laundromat? Because you're actually talking about, can I do more loads and more machines, and spread it out over 70 machines versus 56 machines? Even though you have more, more customers can be in there.
Other way, they're doing less washers, but more capacity. It sounds like, yeah.
Okay. But that means if I only had 56 customers, I could only use 56 dryers. If I had 70 customers with the other one, I could service 70 people. So now it's a size issue.
Well, they also, he mentioned too, he's got 2,100 pounds of wash capacity. So, so now we're looking at that ratio of wash capacity versus dry capacity.
Okay.
And right now he's at 2,100 wash, 2,500 dry. And he's saying, I'm thinking about going 2,100 wash, 2,800 dry. And what you're saying is one thing to consider is the actual number of customers you can serve.
Or the size of my laundry to see how many people can be in there. And if you have 2,100 pound capacity right now, what's pushing the argument to 2,800 pounds? Is it wash, dry, fold? Are you trying to compete with your day-to-day self-service people? Do you need to work? Do you need to open up your laundromat after hours? What's pushing that argument or decision for the 2,800 pounds? and the fewer machines? What's pushing it? Distributor, looks, size? What changed in your overall operations that caused that?
Yeah, all good questions to consider. Just very generally speaking, and I just want to shout out Ross Dodds, who is pretty much a legend in the industry, runs the laundromat owners Facebook group.
Oh, and, Ross is here.
He's in the house, and his comment was I think it's a good comment. That ratio, Armin, he's saying 2,100 pounds of wash capacity to 2,800 pounds of dry capacity is great. Typically, you want a little more dry capacity than wash capacity, but the questions that Andrew was posing are also, to take it sort of a step further. Those are some of the things that you'd want to be asking and answering in order to help make that decision. Customers likely would adjust accordingly, especially if you're replacing old dryers with newer dryers and that kind of thing. They'd probably adjust accordingly. So, somebody asked, anything else you want to say on that, Andrew?
No, I'm okay. He said it's a 4,100 square foot laundromat, and I'm just looking at foot traffic and capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So if your numbers are high and people are actually waiting for dryers, you can always use more poundage, and you want to put more poundage, why not?
Yeah. Somebody asked, they're taking over a zombie mat, and they want to know what's the first steps that they should be taking when they take over a zombie mat.
Wow. Well, 4,400 square feet is a big zombie.
Well, it's a different person. Oh, no, same one. No, you're right.
Yeah. So the question I have now is that 4,400 is a lot of capacity to have based on what you're trying to accomplish. And so I break it down further to say, well, what's my competition and what's my market? And, to be truthful, a 4,400 square foot laundromat, properly equipped, could easily handle $90,000 to $100,000 a month in revenue. And if you are in an area that you might see 40 or 50, then 44 is too big. Now, that doesn't mean you can't take the 4,400 and do what we did at Lucy's, which was have some smaller kiosks in that overall building, and then have a small laundromat that would complement those other businesses. I'm just saying at 4,400 square feet, if I was getting it at $1 a foot, maybe it wouldn't be bad. But if I'm getting it at $2 or $3 a foot, that means 12,000. I got to do at least 50 in that laundromat. Can I do that? And that's the question that I would look at once I start to look at a zombie for that square footage.
Yeah, that is a big one to have to purchase, because I'm assuming you're gonna have to purchase that from somebody, and then retool it and renovate it also. So there's a lot of cost going into this. So, if you boil it down, it comes down to math, and you got to make sure the maths, right? Like make sure the numbers work. But it is a big store to do that. So, I think, you're going to have to take a look at demographics to make sure there's enough business to be had there. Whether that's just self-serve or self-serve and drop off, or self-serve drop off, pickup and delivery. Depending on your business model, you're going to want to take a look at demographics for sure. You're going to probably want to take a look at your competitors and see where you can position, not physically the location, but how you can position this laundromat in that market to distinguish yourself and to attract the right customer base and enough customers to make this thing go. So, there's some pro formas. You can check out the pro forma on laundromatresource.com, play around with that to make sure that it's making sense for you. Numbers wise, or if you're working with a distributor or a broker, I'm sure they can help you out with that too. But yeah, that's a big one to tackle. And I would say, hey, make sure you're getting lots of documentation, document pictures, maybe some video and stuff, just so that you've got that information. Once you turn this thing around, it'll be cool to show all of that too. This is a good point for me to just kind of, Andrew doesn't know I'm doing this, but Andrew does consulting, and you can book one-on-one consulting calls with Andrew. If you've got questions, you need to go through demographics analysis, competitive analysis. You need to go through, some the acquisition process, you need some help kind of going through that with a specific laundromat. Andrew does all that. If you need help kind of improving your store, he can help you kind of audit your store and go through all that. Check out laundromatresource.com/coaching. You can book one-on-one call with him there. He is the man. He will definitely help you. There's a lot of good reviews if you go check out over there. We use a third-party scheduling software, and all of those reviews on there are through a third-party vendor, and we cannot touch them or amend them or get rid of any of them. So you can go through and check all those out. Comes super highly recommended, which probably is no surprise to any of you who have encountered this man before.
There's a question here from
yeah.
Jess. Would you ever buy a building and put in the infrastructure to convert into a laundromat, assuming you own the building and the building has 3 tenants already? Okay. Well, if the area is void of having a decent laundromat, and you could actually put in a reasonable size one that would captivate a decent part of the marketplace, I would probably look at it, what it would take to do that. And see, you would be using your mortgage as what your rental rate would be. And simple math on that is multiply that by 4. And that's the minimum amount you need to do in your laundromat in order to be able to afford your rent. The rest of it will fall into play. But I would absolutely, if you could own the laundromat, own the real estate, I'd own the real estate if you could.
Yeah, real quick, I'm gonna comment on that too, but real quick, just wanted to shout out Lauren Burkowski, also in the chat, 717 Laundry Service there. She's been doing our women's live Q&A along with Madison, who's also in the chat. If you want to book a call with Lauren, you can do that at laundromatresource.com/coaching too. So what's up, Lauren? Lots of legends here in the chat. But going back to what were you just talking about? Buying the building. So, the main thing, this is really going to depend on where you're at. But one thing I would do early on in the process is figure out what the impact fees are, the hookup fees, connection fees are. Ross, who's in the chat here, and I one time tried to do exactly that, except for we didn't buy the building, we leased it, but it was a white box. We call it a white box, right? No infrastructure. And we tried to do that, and I believe, Ross, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe those impact fees, which is just a thumbs up, an A-OK to connect up to the sewer fees, not permits. It's not the actual construction, but just an okay to do that. I think it was something like $390,000 to do that. And that killed that deal for us. So if you've got a building or you're thinking about buying a building, find out what those costs are before you purchase that building. If the success of that building depends on you putting that laundromat in there. So just something to chew on there. Andrew, I got another question for you. They're coming in quick, so we got to keep moving.
Okay.
Also, Lauren, just wanted to point out, somebody asked you if you're near Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So throw that in the chat if you're still around. Their first store is opening August 1st, and they're starting with a wash, dry, fold. Do you have a recommendation on how many different options they should offer in their wash, dry, fold business?
Honestly, I think I should kick that to Ross Dodds.
Yeah.
There's a guy that can answer that a lot more proficiently than I could. I always take the option of keeping it simple, sweetie, and kiss it. And in the beginning, when they're starting to get to know you without a lot of options, I would like to keep it as basic as I can, and then grow on that when we find out what the needs of the clients are or the neighborhoods are in order to do more. Plus what my competition is doing, then I can start to blend all the different subtle things that you can to draw more people in. So I'm more of a simple guy in the beginning, and then taking it to 2 or 3 levels after that.
Yeah. I actually was going to say the same thing. Keep it simple, keep it streamlined. Cause there's a big learning curve, right? You're taking over a new business, or you're starting a new business, both on the self-serve, and on the drop-off side. There's a lot of systems and processes to learn. Maybe you have employees you've got to train, and they've got to learn all the processes, and maybe software, all that stuff. So just keep it as simple as possible, and then build on that. And the reality is, unless you're like a marketing whiz, or your demographic is just primed for it for some reason, it's going to be a relatively slow ramp up anyway. So you might as well just offer your core kind of options, keep it really simple, and then build it out as your business begins to grow. there. I'll ask you this, but Ross, if you haven't chimed in, I'm trying to keep up on the chat here, but there's a lot coming in.
Ross did.
If you haven't chimed in on this next question, you should too, because Ross has gone through pretty much everybody. But do you have any payroll software recommendations that you have?
Is that to me?
Yeah, to you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, not really. I mean, I keep it all simple. I would go with like ADP or something. Just I do outside source. I wouldn't do inside source unless I had a large operation. Maybe 5-6 employees, 1 or 2 employees. I don't think it's worth it. But hey.
Yeah, and I've used Gusto to do payroll there.
Look at Ross came back. ADP.
ADP. There you go.
So.
Yeah, Dave Menz has a code.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we got that one. This is an interesting one. I actually have something to say, but I'm curious what you would say about this one. How do you figure out how much a wash costs per load for you, the owner? Do you have any ideas on that?
I've tried for several years to actually get it nailed down, and it's really hard. Some people mathematically speaking, I think that there's a lot of variables now with the different machines, shorter washer, longer rinses, extra rinse, hotter cycle, colder cycle. I mean, and to plug it in, it would be nice if there was a software program. I think some of the manufacturers are now getting to the point where they're thinking that through, and they're getting it to all you have to do is put the cost of say what a therm costs or what a cubic foot of water costs, and it'll be able to do that. I do it really simple, and it may be crazy, but if my utilities in my laundromat are running 23%, and I'm looking at my total overall nut in my laundry, and I'm running at about 51% or 41% and 52% net, or whatever the case may be, I'm going to use that number and multiply it by the load. And I'm going to say on a $3 load or a $5 load, if I'm netting 40%, then I'm going to tell you that I'm somewhere near what the cost of that load is, because that's driving my whole number. And that's really what it is. It's all my expenses less what that is. Now, if they want to get it down to the actual per gallon or per dollar, I'm not sure that. What's the benefit? So what would be the benefit of you getting that number? What is going to drive your thinking about how you market your store, how you price your store, to know exactly what it is per pound or per load?
I can tell you what I think. I think that actually is super valuable, and that we should be doing that. And it's not easy to do that, because most of us just play a guessing game, right? We try to see, okay, well, how much do we need to charge based on our competitors or based on kind of whatever we think. But the way that I like to think about it, and this is easier said than done, but the way that I like to think about it is I want to say, okay, how much does it cost me? And then what margin do I want to make? Do I want to make 30%, 40%, whatever margin on that? And that actually will dictate my pricing for me there. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. To what point?
So that I know that I'm making the margin that I want to make. And now I know when it changes how much it's costing me, whether rent goes up or cost of employees goes up or utilities goes up,
right?
Then I can adjust the formulas and know exactly how much I need to charge for my washers.
I'm going to use that scenario just to play devil's advocate for a moment.
Yeah.
So I'm in Huntington Beach.
Yep.
And I'm using your formulas. I know you've got one on your website, and I'm looking at it. I'm saying, well, geez, my 40 pounders ought to be $9.75, but that's $1.50 above all my competitors. Are you going to go to the $9.75?
Ask Ross. Ross does. That's exactly.
No. I'm asking.
That's exactly. Yes, I would say yes. I would do that, but. And Dave Menz also would say the same thing, and Luke and Lee Williford will also say the same thing, because. I mean, you've got to deliver, right? You've got to deliver that much value for it. But what it does is it allows you to do that. It gives you the margin, because now you have the margin that you need. It gives you the margin to be able to level up your service that much. And that's I think the game that we play is, oh man, I need to be charging this much, but nobody else is, so I can't do it. And that's where we lose as an industry. That's why so many of us are behind.
And I'm going to throw a small curveball to you.
Yeah, do it.
Let's do the same with the dryers.
Oh, absolutely.
We're raising prices on wash, but the dryers aren't following.
Yeah, or they're free. Yeah.
In the Dust Bowl days, when I first started in this industry, dryer income was about 40% of your total revenue.
Yeah.
Now dryers are around 18 to 22%.
Yeah.
About half. And we've been raising prices, but we haven't started to push up the dryers. And we should push up the dryers. Dryers start getting to that level now. I think the time has come for full dry. I think the time has come that says you put in $2 and you get to dry your clothing. And that's the end of the story.
Well, that's exactly right. Right. Because it gets awkward when you're like, hey, a quarter is 10 minutes. Okay, a quarter is 7 minutes. Okay, a quarter is 4 minutes. Okay, you get 30 seconds for like at some point it breaks down, right? And Ross is really good about that. He's been saying full cycle dries for a long time, which is great. And even when Ross started saying that, I don't think I understood the importance of that. And I'm full on board with that now. Yeah. Stop yelling at us, Ross. He said, love full cycle dry, all caps. Stop yelling, man. No, but I think you're right about that, right? I think you need to know how much does it cost you to dry clothes and then build in your margins and charge accordingly. Now there's a whole, debate on the free dry, which we could, jump into if anybody wants to provoke that in us, but it's not in the chat right now, so we won't. Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, yeah, I would love the full cycle dry in the industry. Let's do it with free dry. The nemesis of Southern California and their free dry, thinking that the Walmart theory would work.
Yeah, we just can't get that kind of volume. That's the problem. Yeah.
That makes sense, Ross.
Yeah, Ross, that's good. And I mean, I'm gonna take it as.
Hold on. Will people overload the dryers? Yes. If you have the plunger that they use for Civil War cannons, they would use that to put laundry in their machines and in their dryers.
Oh gosh, Richard said I have $9 full cycle dry. You must be in Canada. Are you in Canada? Don't fool us if you're Canadian. So that's like 35 cents here. Are you in Canada? Be honest. Just kidding. I'm gonna take it a step further, and I'm gonna say this is another reason why we all need to move to digital payment systems.
Yeah,
I know that is not necessarily a popular opinion with a lot of people, but as our costs go up, if we know our costs and as they go up, we don't have to wait to hit that 25 cent mark before we can raise our prices or whatever, right? Or dollar coin or whatever it is, right? The digital payment systems, I've been kind of on it for a while, but I'm more and more and more convinced that we have got to move that direction quicker even than we are now, even though we're moving there quicker than we ever have here. So I think we need to know how much it costs us to do a pound of wash so that we can build in our margins on all of our machines. I think we need to know how much it costs us to dry so that we can build on our margins and be proactive about that and monitor that. And I also kind of think we need to start shifting towards digital payment systems so that we can move our prices up like gas stations in tenth of a penny not really tenth of a penny, but like in smaller increments than quarters or dollars.
But I want to come back. I agree with you. I don't disagree with you.
You can.
However,
if you want to embarrass yourself in front of everybody, you can disagree with me. So,
however, I want to state that because you have 4 or 5 different options for each machine now.
Yep.
And each manufacturer has a different option that runs a different way. It is going to be very difficult to get a precise answer on each one unless the software program that you're incorporating for
Yeah.
now, unless the
Yeah.
software program that you're incorporating takes into consideration all those variables. Right now, they're not.
Yeah. I agree.
So you're getting a decent number, but it's not an absolute number.
Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that. That was a fun little rabbit hole we just went down. Rabbit trail? Rabbit hole?
Yeah,
Trail.
rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yes, George, we do offer consulting and coaching and broker for laundromat area sale for the area. You can get a hold of me at laundromatsunfiltered.com.
Laundromatsunfiltered.com or go to laundromatresource.com/coaching. And
You
you can book call with him there too. Yeah.
Which one? You looked at?
There's so many. They're coming in. Thank you guys for being in the chat. We're going to try to get to all these questions, but I'm free dry. Everyone in my market is free dry. My issue is people not putting enough clothes in one dryer. That's tough, man. I mean, I was harping on, hey, be $1.50 above everybody else on the watch. But if everybody else is free dry, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to start charging for dry. I don't know. Throw in the chat what you guys think. If you're in a market where everybody's free dry, what do? Do you stay free dry and build in your cost to your wash as best you can, or do you convert to charged? What do you do over there? What do you think? I'm just curious. I mean, honestly, I would have a hard time if everybody else was free dry. I would have a hard time charging for dry, just because not everybody around my laundromats have been free dry, but some have, and I get calls all the time. Are you free dry? And when I say no, and then I try to explain, that phone gets hung up real quick. So
I still like, I'm not free dry. I'll make you pay, but you'll get 25 cents for 45 minutes, whatever you need. But I'll make you pay for that, because then you won't abuse the privilege of having a free dry, and where people will start to put underwear in one and socks in another and jeans in another and towels in another, and they're using 5 dryers when they should only be using 2.
Yeah.
And that's what you get when you're free dry.
Yeah. And it's
you really need a lot of wall space. A lot of wall space.
Yeah, because not only
and then one of my favorite things is, so then they go ahead and put 430s in the wall, and you're like, what are these machines doing in the wall? Walls are only for bathrooms, offices, and dryers.
Yep.
They're not for machines. At least that's the way I was built these things.
Yeah. Richard chimed in. He said $7 US, not $9 or $9 Canadian, $7 US. I was joking about the 35 cents, but yeah, that's a lot, man.
It is
for a full cycle. That's good though. That is good. Okay. How do you increase revenue on a zombie mat without retooling? Like if you can't afford to retool, or it's not gonna, the finances aren't gonna make sense. I mean, maybe the first step is to actually question, does it really not make sense to retool? And if the answer to that is it doesn't, then any suggestions on how do I improve my business if I have a zombie mat and I can't retool?
Well, I think that you have to go back to the basics. You got to figure out, for example, what's your laundromat look like? It probably needs, new bulkheads, or it needs work on the bulkheads. It needs better lighting. It needs a new paint job. It needs a floor done. It needs a good repair guy in there who's going to be on top of the machines, and you're going to have them repaired. I mean, you can limp along on a zombie mat and make it pretty nice for a while. The challenge you're going to have is, I know I wouldn't worry about dryers. Dryers will last you pretty much forever. You can use baling wire and spit, and they'll go on forever. There's 2 types of life in equipment: physical life and economic. The physical life will always outstrip the economic. Dryers, different story. Washing machines, that's a different issue. You have older machines, you're going to probably want more front loaders. You don't want any top loaders at all. They're, as far as I'm concerned, they're worthless. And you can get by with for probably 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. To build up your volume, but you got to stay on top of it. You got to have a repairman that's going to be there every week to get that equipment repaired, so that when your customers come in, they feel comfortable that the machines that they're using are going to work and they're not going to have a problem. You can turn around a zombie mat that way. And then you turn around and you say, okay, I got the volume up a little bit. I can afford to, have a mortgage of $1,500. What am I going to buy?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and just to kind of, I guess, reiterate and to chime in on that is, and you nailed it. Like, go back to the basics, right? Like, first things first, fix everything that doesn't work in the store. That's machines, washers, dryers, change machines, boiler, lights, everything that doesn't work, fix everything that doesn't work. Clean the crap out of that place, literally and figuratively. Deep clean it, hire a team, bring your whole neighborhood in, clean it for 3 straight days, and then keep it spick and span. Even if things are old, if they're working and everything is clean, you're in much better shape than that. And then number 3, I'd say focus on customer service. Even if you're unattended, try to make everything as easy and simple as possible. Make it easier for people to get their problems solved, whether that's putting your cell phone number on there or I don't know, like an iPad on the wall that connects directly to your FaceTime, or I don't know, like make it easy, an easy way to get refunds when things go wrong. And if you focus on customer service, you keep everything spick and span, you keep everything working, you're going to be in much better shape. You will win back more customers. What I would not do is start advertising right away because the worst thing you can do is spend money on advertising, bringing customers in, and have machines down and the place is still dirty and it's still living up to that old reputation, right? You've got to clean up the reputation and then get people back in. That order matters a lot.
True.
Where do you find laundromats for sale, Andrew?
What's that?
Where do you find laundromats for sale? How do you do that if you're looking?
Well, I think you can go to the normal resources, which is, you might try Craigslist, you might try Biz by Sell. Newspapers have businesses for sale every Sunday. You can check the newspapers. I prefer the on the ground, the boots on the ground. I've worked mailers, I've worked laundromat sections where I've went into cities and just pounded on the pavement and stopped every laundromat I saw and left a note, a real brief note, probably 15 words, and that's it. Call me. And you usually get some people that way. It's pretty hard right now. The market has shifted in the last 2 years to where we have probably doubled or tripled the number of buyers that we have for a number of sellers. And I think I think we started off with talking about sellers and why they won't give up information or why they're afraid to give up information. And the fact still remains, we still have to get the information and be able to work it and discern if he actually is doing the volume or they're doing the volume to make a deal. But to find a good seller today it's a hard challenge. You really got to be aggressive and you got to bird dog it, and you got to look at a lot of crappy ones before you find one that is worth investing in.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's one thing that I say to consulting clients now is like, hey, if you're in that phase where you're looking for a laundromat, just hang tough. I think, a lot of people get pretty frustrated when trying to find laundromats. And, one thing I've been telling a lot of my consulting clients is frustration happens when expectations don't match reality. So to level set expectations, it's tough to find laundromats for sale right now. Not always and not all over the place. I've got clients who we've been looking for 4, 5, 6 months for the right laundromat. And I had a client who, booked consulting with me, and between our first call and our second call, he found a laundromat. We got it under contract, and he's getting ready to close on it within the next week. And it just happened like that, right? So it's not always like that. But if you expect it to take a little time and effort, and you expect to have to do a little more work than just looking on Biz by Sell every day, then you won't get so frustrated when it takes a little bit of time to find that right laundromat to buy. So talking to brokers, checking online, obviously you can do direct mail campaign. A lot of my consulting clients are finding success doing direct mail campaigns and kind of across the nation that is working right now.
Right.
There are deals to be had, and you can find them off market that way too. But those are a few things that are working these days. Laundromat financing. You got any suggestions on where to get financing for laundromats?
I think the 3 main ones that you, first of all, if you're financing laundromats, you're going to probably be with Eastern or Clean Laundry or is it Prime Capital?
Yeah, Prime Capital.
Prime, and then most equipment manufacturers will finance all their laundry equipment. A lot of them will do it for 100%. So it just depends on what brand you want to use and what kind of financing you actually need. If you need a combination of both, there are some manufacturers out there that might do some of the purchase as well as the equipment, but the equipment that's in there has got to have some kind of value because they're going to use the lease and the equipment as collateral. And sometimes that doesn't work for them mathematically.
Yeah.
I would like to get sellers to start carrying paper, but they changed the law a few years ago that says you can only take the write-off in the year that you get it, and they charge you for the entire tax, your capital gains, regardless of whether you carry a note or not. So
Is that true?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Check with your tax guy tomorrow. But
I'm going to ask him tomorrow. That's a good.
I'll tell you what. Interest rates in the market today are I don't know, 3% CD, 2.5%, 3%. You look at a seller and you say, so you're going to go put that $100,000 in a CD at 3%. I'll give you 8. I'll give you 9. Carry paper. Now he's got skin in the game. So I always like to ask sellers to carry some portion of the purchase.
Yeah. Yeah. It gives you a lot of flexibility that way. And it can give them some flexibility too, but that's interesting. I did not know that. So I'm going to ask on that seller financing thing.
Right.
That would be really good to get some clarity on. Can you hire independent contractors to take care of your laundromat?
Okay, so here's the rule that I was taught, and I don't think it's changed. If you set their schedule, if you give them a mop, you supply soap, you give them any tool whatsoever, they're an employee. So if they show up in their own vehicle, they pull out all their own mops, buckets, and brooms, all their own trash liners, and the whole 9 yards, and they come in and clean your laundromat whenever they want to clean it. They don't use any of your supplies, and they get in and get out. They can be considered an independent contractor. Otherwise, they're an employee. Now, whether or not you get caught doing that, whether or not, are all different issues. But from what I understand, that's pretty much what I understand to be an independent contractor versus an employee.
Yeah. Also, I think if you dictate kind of when and how things happen, there's some rules like that for that. But it kind of depends on also what you mean by take care of your laundromat, right? If it's come in and clean, lots of laundromat owners hire a company to come in and clean their laundromats, right?
Right.
So that's fine. If take care of your laundromat is, be there all day, come in and clean, open up, close down, those kinds of things, that's where it starts to get a little bit gray, dark gray, yeah, blackish, light black there. And, so that's generally,
right.
And again, talk with your tax person about that. Cause we're not tax people. We don't know the exact situation that you're in there. There's a deal that Tim wanted some input on. Let me scroll back up to it.
All right.
And I'll read you what he said. Where's it at? Tim, that was a long time ago, man. Okay. There's a closed laundromat with a 20-year lease. It's 4,050 square feet, 1 year free rent, $1.25 a square foot. Retool 30 washers, 30 dryers in LA. The main strategy is 80% service, so wash, dry, fold, and pick up and delivery, and 20% self-serve. Do you have any input on that deal?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Were you paying attention? Do I need to read it again?
No.
You space out. You always space out when I'm talking. Come on, man. I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm trying to read what you got there too. First of all, so you're at $5,000 a month for rent. So by my rule of thumb, you got to do minimum $20,000 in that laundry for it to be worth doing and getting involved. You've got 30 washers and 30 dryers, which is small for a 4,000 square foot laundromat. That's probably 1,500 square feet too large, but that's okay. I mean, you get what you get. The strategy would be to be wash, dry, and fold and pick up and delivery at 80% and maybe 20% self-service. Well, so I got to look at that and say, I like your idea of what you would like to try to achieve, but I don't think you can regulate whether or not you do 20% in self-service. You're going to do whatever you do self-service because of the parking, the exposure, the ingress, the egress, the shopping center, the tenant mix, and where you are in the shopping center. So I don't know if I can really apply the thinking that says maybe do 20%. If you want to be in a wash, dry, fold atmosphere and you want to be in that business, then I recommend finding a smaller place, because you can do what you need to do in a smaller place and generate a lot of revenue in half the square footage for what you're going to pay in rent. So if that's what you want to be in wash, dry, and fold, and that's really where you want to be, then I would probably say I would be looking at a dry cleaners that is going out of business, and it's 1,500 square feet, and the landlord's dying to lease it out. And even at $1.75 or $2 a foot, it's still $3,000 a month. In 1,500 square feet, I can put in enough machines to do a nice wash, dry, and fold, pickup and delivery business out of that space.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even, I mean, even just a small kind of industrial
that too.
Space too, which usually the lease is a little cheaper even.
Right. Of course. So if I went into this, now I'm going to go to the other side with Tim. Tim, 20-year lease, fantastic. Closed store, I love it. $1.25, 5,000. 30 washers and 30 dryers. It's probably already laid out, so it's a poor layout. It probably needs to be remodeled. The dryers would probably be okay. You're going to be looking at replacing 30 machines. You need to build for horsepower, so you're probably going to put a lot of front loaders in there. Probably start with 30s, 40s, 60s, and a couple of 80s, and see how you weather out your self-service on the weekends, how you do. I'm going to estimate you'll probably do 40% or more for self-service, and you can go after your wash, dry, and folds, provided it doesn't interfere with your day-to-day operations of your self-service customers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think realistically, if you got a 4,000 square foot space in LA, you're going to be doing more self-serve than.
Incredible lease, incredible everything. Absolutely. But the question becomes, are you in the self-service business? Are you in the laundromat business? Or are you in the wash, dry, fold, pickup, and delivery business?
Yeah.
And you have, and can you support that in that location?
Yeah. Exactly. But awesome lease, man. $1.25 a square foot in LA is, yeah. I mean, you might just wrap that up just to sell the lease, man.
Exactly. You just might do that to somebody that wants to put in, wants to make it a large store.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody asked if you can fix boilers. I'm sure there's stuff in the chat about that. I mean, you can hire people to fix boilers. I mean, it depends on what's wrong, really, and what the boiler is and how old it is. And, it depends. I don't know. You have anything to say about that one?
I got a laundromat in Los Angeles. I'm trying to close escrow. I've been trying to close escrow for a while, but every time I turn the corner, there's something else. So repair guy goes in to fix the equipment, and he goes, I can't get the heater to go on. Okay. So I call the seller. The seller doesn't live in Los Angeles, by the way. And I'm informed that it's a 2-year-old boiler and it's a Ray pack. Well, okay, great. So I got a heater and a storage tank. And so the repair guy who fixes equipment can't repair the boiler. I'm like, well, that's weird. Okay. I'll get somebody else in there. So I get somebody else in there, and they tell me that it needs a regulator because the water pressure is too high or too low and it won't work. And he wants, $1,000 for the regulator. I said, okay, that's nice. And then he tells me that there's an 1.5 inch copper pipe that has a bunch of patches on it. And he didn't think that was right, and that needs to be replaced. And I'm like, hold on, time out. That's totally different than getting the boiler working so I can get the equipment repaired so I can close this escrow. So now I'm back to, I'm going to bring in a plumber tomorrow so that I can go sit down with him and say, what's wrong with the boiler or the heater? It's only 2 years old. And what's wrong with the regulator, and what's it going to cost? And then find out what the other issue that the other boiler guy told me about the pipe and what have not. So to answer your question, I don't know much about boilers, but I know there's a lot of shenanigans going on, and I'm going to get to the bottom of what I'm with. But, there's the old boilers are on their way out, but Someone says, when I inspect a laundromat, what do I do with that old boiler? And I say, live with it until it dies. And then when it dies, you replace it.
Yep.
You won't find a seller in the industry that'll look at you and say, oh my goodness, you're right. Let me replace that for you. They're going to look at you and say, it works, even though it's 35 years old, and that's how it's going to be sold. That's pretty much what it is.
Yep. This is a interesting question. I have something to say on this, but I'd be curious about what you have to say about this. What are your thoughts on letting somebody run a wash, dry, fold service out of your laundromat? Like somebody they're running their own business, but in your laundromat.
Well, I don't know. You want to pay me $2,500 or $3,000 a month for the opportunity? Maybe.
Okay. I mean, typically, yeah, go ahead.
And then I'd look at them and say, and when do you plan to do your work? Because I don't want you using the machines when my customers are in here, because my customers are more important than you. So you'll have to figure out when you can do your wash, dry, fold. You can have 9 o'clock afterwards till 6 a.m. in the morning till the cows come home, no problem. So long as you're not going to impede on what I have going on, fine. I mean, there are some people that don't want to do wash, dry, and fold. It's labor intensive. It's got a lot of sticky wickets, for lack of a better description.
Mm-hmm.
And, it might be what they want to do. I mean, there are people, I just saw one in here earlier, that they're thinking of doing wash, dry, fold at home. And I think they wanted to transfer out of that or what have not. And it's like, well, if you're going to do it at home, I mean, you could do it at home, but there's a couple of more places you could probably do it to make more money. But I wouldn't want them cutting into my business in my laundromat. So I'd have to think about that heavy.
Yeah. One thought, I mean, so typically how I've seen this work, or how I've seen this be set up, is allow somebody to run a wash, dry, fold business out of your laundromat. You don't necessarily charge rent, although you could. And their payment basically is just to use your machines, right? And so you benefit from more turns from your machines, and they benefit from whatever margin they get from how much it costs them to use your machines versus how much they charge their customer. And that's their margin. And I've seen that work, and I've seen it work well. However, a couple things to just think about is, number one, you're giving up control of the reputation of your business to someone else. So if they drop the ball, people are going to associate that with your laundromat. So it's something to consider when you're allowing somebody to do that. If they're not good and their values and their work ethic don't match what you're trying to set up with your business, it will negatively impact your business and your business reputation. It could be in the form of Google reviews. People will not separate out their wash, dry, fold business from your laundromat. So it's something to be aware of. If you're going to do that, do it wisely. And then the other thing you mentioned is you have less control over when that laundry gets processed. And if it's getting processed at inconvenient times for your self-serve customers, that can create a problem. So again, just something to kind of be aware of in that scenario.
I want to make a comment on that. I just got back from Lost Wages this weekend, and there's Hell's Kitchen at Bellagio.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no different than a laundromat if Sally's wash and fold out of your laundry, and you can delineate and separate that individual from you. They'll just have to have a name and post their name, and that's what it is. And you have your name, and that's what it is. So you can delineate. It's a headache. There is a way to fix it, but you still can do it.
Yeah, it's just tough to do, and I haven't seen that done well in our industry. And the other thing that I see a lot of times when in that scenario is part of the deal is that wash, dry, fold person is also kind of keeps the place clean, or their staff or whatever keeps the place clean. And that's sort of the arrangement there. You get free rent, but you keep the place clean. Now you don't have to have an attendant. However, I've seen that go wrong when they decide not to show up, or they decide they're too busy doing laundry to actually keep your place clean, or, their priorities don't necessarily align with yours.
Agreed.
So just something to keep in mind. I'm not saying don't do it, but you want to think through all that. And even though they're not your employee, it's that whole hire slowly or partner slowly and fire quickly, even though you're not hiring them. But just be wise about who you're partnering with. It's almost like a business partnership there, even though it's not technically. Dude, we have 5 minutes. We've been going almost an hour already. Okay, this is an interesting question, and I have a take on it, but I also obviously want to hear your take. What states or cities are ideal for laundromats? When you're considering utilities
Oh,
there.
I don't think utilities is not in my top 5 of sizing up a market. It's not my top 5.
Yeah.
My first one is my demographics, and numbers don't lie, people do. So, I'm going to look at a certain area, say in Brownsville, Texas, and I know Brownsville has a ton of laundromats, and I'm going to look there and say, here's my ABC Street and L Street, and you look at it and you go, okay, how many people are in a mile? How many renters are in a mile? Because those are my customers. And I'm going to take a percentage of those renters, and I'm going to say they're going to use the apartment buildings, small laundromats inside them. And then I'm going to look at and say, geez, there's only 6 laundromats in this area, yet the capacity in this area is $500,000. Now, I know those 6 laundromats aren't doing $500,000 in laundry, so the clients are going elsewhere. Well, that might be a fine place to put a laundromat, and that's where I'm going to start to key in to see if there's something I can get in there, whether it's a not so nice looking laundromat that I can turn into a beautiful one indoors, outdoors, maybe not, but I'm going to start to look at maybe owning property in there so I can get ahead of the curve and not have rent going up and probably eventually choking my business. But those are some of the things that I look at first, rather than look at it and say, what are the utilities costing me to run my business in this area?
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. So here's kind of how I would think of it. I mean, it sounds like you're sort of throwing the doors open and you're saying, hey, where could I go, around the country, around the world or whatever. Apparently you should go wherever Tim is, because he's charging $1 bazillion a drive over
absolutely.
there. But you're saying, where should I go? And again, utilities is not a consideration. Probably my first consideration, if you're thinking about if the world is your oyster here, my first consideration is what states are going to be business friendly, right? Just rule out California, New York, basically the coasts, more or less. Rule those out. If really the world is your oyster here, just rule those out, because they're not business friendly. You want somewhere that's business. I mean, everybody in LA has been getting sued for ADA stuff by just somebody who's taking a cash grab, right? You just don't have to deal with that. You go to Texas, you're not dealing with that issue over there. Somebody just trying to do a money grab there, right? So just throw those out. So I'm looking for business-friendly places first, and then I'm going into exactly what Andrew was saying. I'm looking at demographics. I'm looking at the competitor landscape. All this stuff. I'm really not considering utilities, and here's why, is because you just need to price accordingly, right? The utilities can be whatever the utilities are. It almost doesn't matter what the utilities are. What matters is that you're charging appropriately for what your expenses are, whether that's rent, utilities, labor. Those are your main ones typically. And then whatever else you have, insurance, all that other stuff after that. Right. So you just need to make sure you're charging accordingly. And obviously you want to try to decrease your expenses as much as possible. However, it's not really a determining factor of where you're going to go, in my opinion. There. Somebody was asking in the chat, and I don't know if you would be actually even interested in this, but they found a good space. It needs work, and the landlord is not cooperating in terms of providing TI, which is tenant improvements, which is money towards improving the interior space of a laundromat in this case. Do you help with landlord negotiations at all?
Well, I have. You have to create a need for that landlord that he doesn't see. Mm-hmm. And that is a nice size laundromat is going to drive 300, 400 people a week to a laundromat. There's not a lot of business besides major fast foods that are going to do that kind of foot traffic and have it come in consistently on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. And so you kind of have to get into their head on what they're looking for as a tenant, and find out, what are they motivated by? Would it help your shopping center if I brought in 300 or 400 customers a week to the shopping center? Would that matter? And I don't think that they are aware of it. Otherwise, they would look at it differently. So, my hat in my hand. What are you looking for? And if he doesn't want to negotiate, it's not the right guy for you, because there are people out there that do want your types of business in their shopping center and would love to have you, and they will give you TI work. It won't be a lot, but they will give you some, or free rent for 6 months, or whatever the case may be. It's all dollars.
All comes down to the almighty dollar. You're right.
All does.
I want to point out, we got a couple more questions. You have a couple more minutes. I know we're like at time, but there's a few more questions. You have
Sure.
time? Okay. But I just want to point out what's happening in the chat here, because I'm dying over here. Basically, what's happening is that Ross Dodds is incredibly jealous of Tim, who found that deal with the $1.25.
He is.
And he's trying to figure out what went wrong, because Ross is like the go-to guy to get those deals, and he's trying to figure out what went wrong here. So I just wanted to point that out, just in case everybody didn't realize what was happening here. And I'm enjoying watching Ross squirm over here on the hook. A lot of fun. Just kidding. When do you get lawyers involved in the process?
Never. Being facetious. Obviously, you don't necessarily need them to start your LLC. I think that most states you can simply do it online and get it done. If you don't have a good broker, you don't have a good consultant that can actually understand your state and the laws associated with the leasing, as well as, this is where a broker comes in to actually be able to hold your hand and understand the ins and outs of what a good purchase agreement ought to look like, how to lock up a seller, because that's really what you're trying to do, and some of the things that you need to have in an offer that protects you as a buyer, and also gives you benchmarks that you're going to hit along the way to make sure that you get what you need. Equipment that's in working condition at the close of escrow. Maybe you need a longer lease, so you want to put the lease option in there. The financial information, what they have to give you, and et cetera, et cetera. Unless it's an attorney state, which some states are, you get the help of attorney regardless of an escrow officer. You're going to actually need someone that is, versed at doing those contracts for you. And so, if you got to go to an attorney, you have to use an attorney. I would go to a broker first, and I'd weed them out. So,
yeah, for me, the one thing that I typically recommend is that the lease, you want 3 people to read your lease. Number one, you want to read the lease yourself. This is a long-term contract that you are entering into, and I know that most leases have a lot of legal, put you to sleep, hard to understand language in it, but you need to read it and try, because you're signing this thing. And a lot of time, not always, but a lot of times there's personal guarantees in there, and there's escalator clauses, and you need to kind of try to grasp as much of that as you can. So you read it. Number 2 is have a lawyer read it to look for legal gotchas. Again, because this is a long-term relationship you're entering into with legal ramifications. And then number 3, you want to have somebody who is familiar with the laundromat space, whether that's a consultant, another owner, a broker who is on your side, somebody who understands that, who can also look for not legal gotchas, but laundromat specific gotchas. And so that's the main places I would have a lawyer taking a look at stuff. You can also have them look at the purchase agreement and stuff too. But a lot of times, if there's a broker involved, the broker will be handling that stuff.
Right.
I just wanted to point out, who was it that asked? DS Hansen asked, they said they have a 2,000 square foot space with a small office. How much wash and fold can they run out of that? And Palm Beach Lakes Laundry said they're doing about 3,000 to 4,000 pounds in a similar space. So I just want to kind of point that out just as a benchmark for people.
Right.
Anything you want to add to that at all?
No, I think that I think the biggest challenge that people are faced with in our business today is that they want to get into the wash, dry, fold business, and they really are interested in it, and they're excited. And then the reality comes in that the only thing that they're missing is the extra storage space that they need. And so now they're looking at sacrificing the baby. Like, can I take out 2 dryers? And can I replace them with 45 stacks instead of 30 stacks so I can get the room? So I think the challenge today now is that with the advent of wash, dry, fold, and the popularity of it, and the segment of society that is now involved with it basically says, I don't want to spend 3 hours a week in a laundromat. I want to do wash, dry, and fold. And therefore, I've got, the businesses are picking up for someone to get an office or space that has, I don't know, 10 by 10. That's a blessed space. Or you take somebody that's already got wash, dry, fold, or that's already has selling bulk over the counter, and you look at that space and you go, I'm going to turn that into a wash, dry, fold, and I'll move the soap to one small shelf, and I'll use the rest of it for storage. So, it's an interesting thing when you get into it to say, if I want to be a wash, dry, fold, I need space, and where do I get it from? Where do I pull from?
Yeah. But the reality of it is, when you get started, it's probably not going to be a problem for a little bit. And so it's better to just get started, and then you have a good problem to
absolutely
figure out down the line. But it's still, I reference this a lot, but one of the funniest things I saw, Mark Vlaskamp, who he started the Fold, and he started pickup and delivery without a laundromat. He was processing laundry in somebody else's laundromat for a long time before he bought his own. And I remember one time he sent me a video, and it was a video of some guys unloading their van out of laundry. And then he panned over, and the sidewalk all out in front of the laundromat, that's not his laundromat, by the way, was full of laundry to be processed. And then he walked into the store with the video, and all along the edges and along the bulkheads, the space between the machines and all that stuff, stacked laundry. He just had laundry everywhere, right? He had a problem, but it was a good problem to deal with, but it was still a problem. And it's one that you're going to have to, it's good to be thinking about that now, but don't let it stop you from getting started, because guess what? It was a problem. It was stressful for Mark, but he got it figured out, and he ended up selling for millions of dollars. So, hey man, take that problem and run with it there. Okay. This is a interesting one. Where did that go?
Which one?
Where'd it go? Oh, Stefan said, any advice on how to manage staffing levels for wash, dried, fold, and pickup and delivery? We're having issues where we are getting slammed and staff is being overworked. Got any advice in that situation?
No, I haven't ran into that. I would probably go back to, do you have the right people at the right job? In other words, do you have the right person handling the customers, or the right person folding, or the right person doing the laundry? And maybe you need to shift people around to find out who's better at what in your laundry. Just like you need a catcher and a pitcher and a first baseman. Same thing in a wash, dry, fold situation. You need to have the right people in the right place in order to not only run, but run smoothly and advance further. So that's the best I can give on that. Ross might answer it a little bit.
Yeah, Ross did, and he said exactly what I was going to say. I mean, your first thing is probably just to raise prices, right? Like if you're overworked, you raise prices, right? Worst case scenario is you lose a few of those customers, and you make the same amount of money with less work, and your people aren't overworked yet, right? So that's a really great suggestion. Yeah, and Ross is talking about it's a balance here.
Yeah, it is.
And it is a balance, right? So, number one, I mean, you want to look at the efficiency of your processes, right? And those of you guys who are running pickup and delivery, maybe you can chime in on this. But one sort of benchmark that I've observed is, the average laundry processor can process about 20 to 30 pounds of laundry per hour. And really good ones can can fly at 40, but that's pretty on the high side. That's what I've seen. But if you guys have actual numbers of your stores in your experience, I'd love for you guys to put that in the chat there. But take a look at that. How many pounds of laundry are your people processing per hour? And I would look at store-wide, but also individual laundry processors, going back to, are the right people in the right places? The first thing is raise prices. Second thing, look for efficiencies. Look for things that are holding up your production, your process here, and try to streamline things as much as possible, making sure everybody's in the right places. And your processes are all streamlined. If you have that, if you raise prices and everything is streamlined really well, then you need to look at capacity. Do you have capacity to do more? And if you do, then you need to put a plan in place to bring on more laundry processors. And sometimes there's that balance there where if you bring on another laundry processor, it bumps your expenses over the gain of adding more. And that's kind of that balance that you need to kind of figure out there. That's kind of where it is. The other option, and Ross did, I'm not sure he would recommend this. Maybe he would. I don't know. You can chime in. But he actually moved his pickup and delivery outside of his laundromats and started a dedicated space for his pickup and delivery stuff. So that was another, avenue that he went to.
Right.
Yeah. And then. I think that's basically it. Somebody was looking for somebody to do their pickup and delivery overnight at their laundromat. As far as I know, there's not a space to do that, but you could chime in like on the forums on Laundromat Resource or on the Facebook groups and just see if there's anybody in your area doing pickup and delivery that needs a place to process laundry overnight. But as far as I know, there's not a dedicated space to connect people in that way. And then somebody asked where to sell a laundromat with real estate. I think Ross said some of the Facebook groups, that can be a good place. I'll just say, post that stuff on there if you're strong enough to. I just see people get ripped to shreds sometimes. Sometimes I don't see a rhyme or reason as to who is like, oh, this is a great thing. And then some people just get ripped to shreds. Some people post unrealistic stuff on there, but I don't know. So do that at your own risk. If you're strong enough and you can handle it, go for it. But just beware that might happen to you on some of those Facebook groups. Ross does a pretty good job of moderating and trying to keep things positive over there on the laundromat owners one. The other thing you can do, and this is nothing for me, but number one is, if I have a huge buyers email list. It's massive. It's a few thousand people kind of nationwide. So I'd be glad to just send information out to that buyers emails list to see if there's anybody there who'd be interested in that. But the other thing, because I know you're in California, is you can connect up with Andrew, and he's got a lot of connections in this space. He's a broker in the space, and he can help you sell it. So those are a few options for you.
Love to help you out.
Awesome. Andrew.
Yep.
You're a rock star, man. Thank you for coming on and doing this. A lot of fun.
Thanks for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I loved all the questions, and I wish that you could actually break it down more and get more involved, but you only have we're already at an hour and 15 minutes, and the hour went by real fast.
I feel like I didn't even have time to enjoy this thing. We were just like bam, 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 bam.
I'm ready for my next one. Would be July.
Sure. You want to do another one in July?
Absolutely.
All right, we'll get one on the calendar for July, and get maybe more questions and then more into depth in some of these if we have time, which we rarely do. The questions just keep rolling in.
They keep rolling in, and they're great questions. So
yeah. And huge shout out to Ross and Lauren and Palm Beach Lakes Laundry and a couple other you guys in there who are veterans over here that were chiming in on stuff. Laundry Wizard, what's up? And thanks for chiming in the chat there, answering questions. I always love that. I say that all the time, but I always love that part the most, to see what's happening in the chat, people helping each other there. Andrew, obviously a wealth of knowledge, and I've got a tiny bit over here to share too. But a lot of the good stuff comes in those chats. So Beast Coast, come on. West Coast, Best Coast.
There you go.
Awesome. Beast Coast, East Coast, Beast Coast. Yeah. it's cute that you think that. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just adorable, I think.
Right.
But appreciate all you guys. Andrew, as always, appreciate you. Looking
Thank
forward
you.
to July. We'll knock another one out of here. It's going to be a lot of fun. Also, keep an eye out, laundromatresource.com/events. I've got a bunch of different people coming on over the next couple months. Some people from some of the different companies in our industry, some of the software companies, and maybe even some manufacturing companies kind of coming on here in the not too distant future. So laundromatresource.com/events, or just make sure you're on our email list, and we'll be sending out info of when those are coming out. I think the next one is next week with Alex Jakowski of Sense. So if you've got questions about Sense, LaundryWorks, direction of this industry, technology in this industry and where it's heading, all that stuff, next week will be a good one for you to chime in on. But Andrew,
Yep.
thanks again, man. Looking forward to the next one.
Thank you very much. I had fun. To all you guys out there, keep up the good work, and let's see if we can't make some money in this business.
Jensen, Burbank in the house.
Jensen.
Listen,
All right, Jens.
We're rolling out of here now, Jensen. So Burbank out of the house. Just kidding. I'll see you guys later. Have a good night, guys.
All right.
Go take action on some of this stuff, huh?
All right.